The Grave Tattoo by Val McDermid, read by Dervla Kerwin. The Prelude, September 2005. All landscapes hold their own secrets. Layer on layer, the past is buried beneath the surface, waiting for human agency or meteorological accident to force the skeleton up through flesh and skin, back into the present. Like the poor, the past is always with us. That summer, it rained as if England had been transported to the tropics. Rivers burst their banks, demolishing whatever was vulnerable in their path. In the flooded streets of one previously picturesque village, cars were swept up like toys and deposited in the harbour, choking it in a chaos of mangled metal. No part of the country was immune from the sheets of stinging rain. City and countryside alike struggled under the weight of water. In the Lake District, it sheeted down over fell and dale, and the water levels in the lakes reached record summer highs. The only discernible benefit was that when the sun did occasionally shine, it revealed a lusher green than usual. Above the village of Fell Head, on the shores of Langmere, ancient peat hags were carved into new shapes under the onslaught of water. And as autumn crept in, the earth gave up one of its close-held secrets. From a distance, it looked like a scrunched-up tarpaulin stained brown by the brackish water of the bog. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, another piece of discarded rubbish that had worked its way to the surface. But closer inspection revealed something far more chilling. Something that would reach across the centuries and bring even more profound changes in its wake than the weather. The way it rained that summer, it would have broken your heart to see. It smashed its sheets to smithereens and flowed down the corrugated roofs of dismal railway stations. And I would sit, waiting for trains, feet in puddles, my head starry with rain, thinking of you miles from me in Grecian sunlight, where rain never falls. Jane Gresham stared at what she had written, then crossed it through so firmly the paper tore and split in the wake of the nib. Bloody Jake, she thought angrily. She was a grown-up, not some love-struck adolescent. Sub-poetic maundering was something that she should have left behind years ago. Studying other people's poetry was what she was good at. Interpreting their work, exploring thematic links in their verse, and opening up their complexity to those who were, she hoped, an assorted number of steps behind her in the process. Bloody Jake, she said out loud, crumpling the paper savagely. He wasn't worth the expense of her intellectual energy, nor the familiar claw of pain that grabbed at her chest at the thought of him. The alarm on her mobile phone beeped. Jane frowned, checking the time on her phone against the watch on her wrist. Hell and damnation, she said. How could it be 11:30 already? Where had the morning gone? Bloody Jake, she said again, jumping to her feet and switching off her computer. She grabbed her bag and went through to the other room. Officially, this was the living room, but Jane used it as a bedsit, preferring to have a completely separate space to work in. The small room could barely accommodate even her Spartan existence. Her sofa bed, although folded away now, dominated the space. A table sat against the opposite wall, 3 wooden chairs tucked under it. A small TV set was mounted on a bracket high on the wall, and a beanbag slouched in the furthest corner. But the room was fresh, its soft green paintwork clean and light. On the wall opposite the sofa hung a series of digital colour photographs of the Lake District, blown up to A3 size and laminated. At the heart of the landscape, Gresham's farm, where her family had eked out a meagre living as far back as anyone could trace. She stripped off her sweatpants and fleece top, swapping them for tight-fitting black jeans and a black V-neck stretch top that accentuated generous breasts. Experience had taught her that making the most of her assets meant better tips from customers. She grabbed her rainproof jacket from its hook and took her invariable last look at the Lakeland vista before walking into a completely different universe. When she told her mother she'd been granted a council flat on the Marshpool Farm estate, Judy Gresham's face had lit up. "That's nice, love. I didn't know you got farms in London." Jane knew her mother well enough to know that she wouldn't want the truth. The only accommodation the council was going to offer Jane was a hard-to-let box in a run-down East End estate where almost nobody had any form of legitimate employment, where kids ran wild day and night, and where there were more used condoms and hypodermic needles than blades of grass. Jane would have swapped London for Fellhead in the blink of an eye if it had held the faintest possibility of doing the work she loved. But there were no jobs for academics in the Lakes, not even for a Wordsworth specialist like her. So she was stuck in the worst kind of urban hell. Jane turned